Today is April 12th, 2007. We're doing an oral history interview for the archives at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. I'm Charles Lundquist. Our guest today is Zack Thompson, a NASA retiree and a man of many talents. We're delighted to have you here today, Zack.
Thank you.
We'd like to start out by letting you tell a little bit about where you spent your youth, where you were educated, and how you got interested in the space program.
Okay.
So,
okay,
it's all yours.
All right. I went to the public school system in East Tennessee. Consider Sweetwater, Tennessee, my hometown, which is south of Knoxville. And of course, in 1950, I went into the Army. And that's the wrong time to be in the infantry for sure, because that's when the Korean War broke out. And I didn't go in, of course, until the war broke out. And then I spent 2 years in the infantry, 9 months on the front line in Korea. And I was not an officer, I was an enlisted man, but when I was discharged, which was 2 years from the time I went in, and before I was 21 years old, I was 20 when I was discharged, I was a master sergeant. Oh. And you can only do that in combat, but when they shoot down to you, you're it, you know.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
any remarks about your Korean experience you'd like to leave with us?
When I went over there, I said to myself, I just want to do the minimum so that I can get back home. And after a little while being over, I decided if I was going to get back home, I better take some leadership responsibility, you know. So I just gradually moved up the line, and I became a platoon sergeant and led several patrols into North Korea. Fortunate I'm still alive. I don't like to tell war tales, but they were expecting a big push. The Chinese were in front of us, and we were expecting a big push, and I was on an outpost, which in infantry tactics, the outpost is to be either lost or captured, but it saves the line from being surprised, you know.
Right.
So first they sent up the chaplain who preached our funeral. So when I die, all I've got to do is be buried. They don't have to go through the funeral. But and then they brought in the attorneys to give us our last will and testament, which didn't, you know, we knew what to expect. We knew we were on an outpost and we were fixing to get hit, and we knew what was supposed to happen to us. But at any rate, the push was called off because of real bad weather, and of course our aircraft was bombing like everything, and artillery going off. But anyway, that was the only war tale that I think I ought to tell. I am here,
okay, and
I'm happy to be here.
Well, what did you do when you got discharged?
When I got discharged, I started to school. In fact, I was offered a battlefield commission while I was in service, and our battalion commander, who was a colonel, he come up one Sunday and he couldn't understand why a 20-year-old kid would turn down a battlefield commission, you know. So he wanted to talk to me in person, and did. And he, when I told him I wanted to go to school, and he said, well, let me recommend you to the best school in the United States. Of course, I knew he was talking about the University of Tennessee. But no, he was talking about West Point, and he was a West Point graduate. He said he had the same authority as a congressman or a senator, being a battlefield commander. And he said, I'll pull you off the line right now. And boy, that was tempting, because any second could be your last one, you know. But I didn't. And he said, well, what are you going to study? And I said, engineering. And when I said that, he didn't offer me any alternative to that, you know. And that kind of impressed me, because I didn't know much. I'd never met an engineer. I didn't know much about engineering until I went to college. But I went to the University of Tennessee, and then later on I got a master's degree. Now I got a BS in 1957. And I went down to Florida to work for the Martin Company, and they had just, when they got the Persian contract, they sent me up here on TDY. Well, of course I didn't know where Huntsville was even. And they asked me, said, how would you like to go to Huntsville? And I said, well, I don't know where Huntsville is, but I understand it's close to East Tennessee, you know. And they sent me up here for, I guess I was supposed to come for 90 days, and they left me a year and a half. And as a result of that, I got acquainted with a lot of the people here, and they offered me a job, and Martin pulled me back and put me in charge of the autopilot analysis on the Persian, which was, I was about 27 years old, and that was quite a responsible
It's a heady job.
Yeah, it surely was. Probably the most responsible job I ever had. But at any rate, I enjoyed that because I majored in automatic controls, and I had gotten 3/4 of graduate servo in automatic controls under Dr. Charlie Weaver, and I loved it. And that's what I was doing then, and when I came to work for NASA, that's what I did there.
So when did you come to work for NASA?
In 1960.
60.
Yeah.
When NASA was formed, more or less.
Yeah.
When March
In
was
fact,
formed.
I was out there when President Eisenhower came down and dedicated the center. But I started working for Brooks Moore, and he had all of the flight hardware, electrical flight hardware for all of the vehicles. And he put me in the thrust vector control area, which I came up with all of the requirements for the specs, for the actuators and the stabilization of it. I don't know if you remember Saturn I. I'm sure you remember Saturn I, but Saturn I didn't really have a payload requirement. We just wanted to prove the world we could get a large vehicle off the ground. So the engines were unstable. And I worked for the Martin Company, and I could see that, and I wanted to work on that so bad I could taste it. And even my immediate supervisor, which was Mike Kalangi at that time, and he checked to see if he could let me work on it, but they said no, he works for the Martin Company, he can only work on the Persian. Mm-hmm. So, well, I stood by and watched all that take place. And the way they solved the problem is they beefed up the beam that held the engines. And the actuators was at one end of the beam, and the engine was more or less toward the center. And that put the natural frequency of the mass spring resonance out beyond the control system, and that stabilized it. Well, when I came to work here, later on we was building actuators, and I was very much involved then. And they called me up one day from P&B, I guess it was P&B then. They called me up and said, we understand we need to make that stiff for a requirement for the thrust vector control area. I said, no, you make it whatever stiffness you need for the integrity of your structural strength. And I said, I can handle it from that. You just tell me what the spring rate is, and I can handle it. Because I designed a little mechanical shaping network that filtered it out right at the actuator.
All right. I understand that.
Yeah, and that was my specialty, and that's something I loved. But all stages, each actuator was different, each engine was different on each stage, so the mass springs were different. And I was responsible for getting all the data required to build an actuator to do that, which was tremendously satisfying. I had learned the theory, but to see it in action was really satisfying, you know. And of course I was involved in outside activities too, but let me tell you a little bit about my theory, which I believe that if you were going to pay me for 8 hours work, I ought to work 9, because my efficiency is not that good. And if you met me in a hall and talk about hunting, I'd talk hunting. So I didn't worry about it, but I did try to do 9. And one other thing, I did not do any of my personal work on company time. But as soon as I got in my car and started home, I started working for myself. And it's been a very blessing for me. I got into banking, and when I retired from NASA.
When was that?
In 86.
In 86.
Yeah, I served 25 years with NASA, but I got a call from the governor-elect. He asked me if I would be superintendent of banks, and that was on one Sunday night, and I didn't plan on anything except retiring with NASA. Probably I'd still be working if they'd let me, if I'd stayed out there. But he called me, and I said, well, Governor, how much time have I got to let you know? And he said, about 2 minutes. Well, I had just got 55 years old, and I just had 25 years with NASA.
What governor was this?
It's Governor Guy Hunt.
Okay.
Yeah, and he said, well, I'll give you, said, call me back in about a couple of days and let me know. So I come out here, and when I got to my office the next morning, Bob Thompson was center director, and he had a call in for me. He didn't know about this now. He had a call in for me to come to see him, and I went to see him, but I'd talked to Don Bean about what I'd been offered. And he said, I'm going to transfer you to Utah to head up that effort on, we just had the failure.
G.R. Thompson.
Yeah, the solid booster that had broke loose. And he said, I'm going to transfer you out there. And of course I knew what I could do then, and I don't know if he did that intentionally for me or not, but I appreciated if he did. But anyway, I turned it down, and of course when that was a hardship, and I just qualified for early out, so that gave me early out. So I retired on Friday. That was on Tuesday. I retired on Friday and went to work for the governor on Monday. And so I have had no unemployment in my career. But that's how I happened to be out there. I really enjoyed working for NASA. I was making good money on the outside. I was on a bank board at that time, and I've been on the corporate board of 4 different banks and one holding
Being
company.
a banker is a nice outside job.
Yeah, it is, and it's been a financial blessing for me. And of course, that's what qualified me for the job as superintendent of banks of Alabama, and I was that 6.5 years. And that was very exciting. Very much different from my formal background, though.
I dare say.
But the background that I got in banking, it was very good there. And the bank that I was involved with was in East Tennessee. We headquartered one bank in Knoxville, and I was there, or two it was on the board of in Knoxville, and one in Sweetwater and one in Madisonville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. But I used to go up about every weekend. You know, I was very busy, and I had a service station in Sweetwater, and I had a dealership in Ford tractors and farm implements.
Well, you had several irons to fire.
Yeah, I did, and they've all been good to me, and I appreciated them, enjoyed them, and being technically helped me with the tractor business, because they are very technical now with a lot of hydraulic equipment on them and so forth.
Surely.
But the service station was the thing that kind of got me into banking and everything else. Mm-hmm. You don't make much money at a service station, though, if you bat your, but you do learn good business then. If you bat your eyes, you lose money. Mm-hmm. So you watch your pennies and you do it right, hopefully. So I had the service station for 40 years. Mm. So anyway, I've been on 26 corporate boards of directors, and I belong to 26 organizations that I pay dues to. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but it keeps you off the street anyway.
Surely does.
Some of them don't require a whole lot of time. I had a philosophy that if you're going to be a professional man, you all belong with AIAA and IEEE and those kind of things, and Tau Beta Pi and Sigma Psi, and I belong to those, and you pay dues to them. You don't take much time with them, but now the IEEE, when I was young, I spent a lot of time with it. I was on the executive committee here for 4 years, secretary of the local chapter, and I started the first automatic controls group in the South of the IEEE. So I was more active then than I was later on. But and then if you're going to, I've got a 1,200-acre farm, and that requires a little time. And if you're going to be a farmer, you all belong to farm organizations, which I do. And
where is the farm?
It's on the Tennessee border. Half of it is in Tennessee and half of it in Alabama. Now,
what counties?
Jackson County and Jefferson County, Tennessee. Okay. Jackson County, Alabama. It's really not the kind of farm that you grow cotton on or anything like that. We grow trees and deer and rattlesnakes.
And hunt a little.
And I love to hunt. I only get to hunt about 9 months out of the year.
Oh, that's
In fact, I was turkey hunting yesterday.
Did you get one?
I've got 2 so far this year. But Tennessee lets you get 4 and Alabama lets you get 5, so I've still got a long ways to go. Anyway, that is some of the things, Doctor, that I've been involved in, and I can say one thing: I have enjoyed living. And I've been very busy, and I don't know if that's why you enjoy it so much. No doubt but what attitude has more to do with it than any other thing. Attitude, in my opinion, has more to do with you enjoying your work than any other single thing. And
that's a good thought to give to the new people that are coming on the
I believe they ought to work
scene.
on their attitude, and I'm sure that I worked on jobs that nobody but me could have enjoyed, but I enjoyed it, and it didn't bother me. But for the most part, I had good work. I didn't really worry that much about getting ahead because, to begin with, it's very difficult because the top jobs were all taken, and everybody had started work about the same time, and they'd all want to retire about the same time, and I beat them all out, so I didn't get to work my way up very high. I was a chief engineer on a few projects, which was, and I was assistant chief engineer under Jerry Thompson for SSME for 5 years, so that was very
Well, that's a
exciting.
major job.
Yeah, it had 5 actuation systems on it, and then of course you had your thrust vector control, and I was in charge of all of that. Which again, that was very exciting. I didn't have any trouble coming to work up morning and enjoying it after I got here. I don't know how much of my life is worth talking about, but
Well, you've had a career that is enviable to many people.
well, it's been very exciting to me, and I work 1 day a week without charging at the UAH. I've done it for 12 years. I work every Thursday. I'm missing today because
What department?
I work on the maglev train,
Oh, yes.
and Bob used to work with us on it in the early days.
Is there any hope that there's going to be one built around
Well,
here somewhere?
The Congress seem to think you've got to be able to build one and to pay for itself immediately. Things don't work that way. You got to do research first, and they're not putting any money in research, and that is, in my opinion, a mistake. Now, China has built one. It's running. But I noticed on my internet this week that they're losing lots of money at it. And, of course, they built one in Germany and France, and it's kind of hard for them to pay for themselves because it costs so much money to get them started, because you got to build it right away. We at one time wanted to build one in the median of the interstate system. We wouldn't have to pay for right away, and that would have been very good. And we looked at that, and we designed a concept to do that. We also designed a concept to work on a regular railroad system. That's something else. But if you do that, you need to have no in-plane crossing. It's got to be like the interstate system. Right now, between here and Gurley, Alabama, there's 14 crossings. So those trains can't get up to speed. Even the existing trains can't. If they would eliminate those crossings, no in-plane crossings, make either them go over the railroad or the railroad go over them.
No great crossings.
Yeah. They could run 60 and 70 mile an hour between here and Chattanooga, and I don't know about you, but I'd rather ride a train than flying a plane if it didn't take so much time.
Yeah.
Because you can get up and walk around, you can do whatever you want to do, you can have your meals on there, and you can do like Pullman used to be, you know. When I was in service, I used to ride from New England to Sweetwater by Pullman, and you know that was quite an experience for a country boy like me, and it's very enjoyable. And
Yeah, well, when I lived in Boston, I had to go to Washington fairly often, and I'd take the overnight Pullman and be in Washington in the morning for business.
Oh, yeah. Pullman trains was very good. It wasn't, it was first class, really.
Yeah. Well, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave for the new generation of people that are planning to go to the moon and so forth?
Well, the thing the thing that I hated to see NASA do was to drop their research. Because whenever they announced going to the moon, I told my wife, I said, well, they may not make it to the moon, but if we have the same dropout from the research as we did Saturn V, things are going to be wonderful anyway, whether we ever make it to the moon or not. But then they killed all the research, so there's not going to be any dropout to amount to anything. And I think that, from my viewpoint, which is very limited, and I really shouldn't be talking policy of the United States, but that was a mistake in my opinion. I'd like to have seen them kept the research up. And golly, you just look around us and see the research that we know came out of the Saturn V program and NASA programs. And if we could do the same thing for the next 10 years, oh, it'd be wonderful.
Would be. You've got a very good point.
And I would like to see us get back into the research mode. We don't have to spend half the budget on it, but to use existing technology, when a designer is using existing technology, it's probably been designed 10 years ago. Yeah. So you're already behind the learning curve, you know,
That's
way
true.
back there. So I would say that if you get a chance, you're a young engineer and you get a chance to do some research, do it. Because I think that's
it's a very good thought to leave for the new generation.
And work hard and enjoy life, because it's awfully short. And when you get my age, you realize how short it is.
Well, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Interesting interview to hear about your very varied professional history. You've done more things than most people have.
Well, I've been busy. I don't know that I've accomplished any more than most people, but I have what you'd say in East Tennessee, I've dabbled in a lot of things.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate you having us.